Ivan Misner is the founder and chief visionary officer of BNI, which is the world's largest business networking organization. They were founded in 1985. They have over 11,700 chapters in 76 countries throughout every populated continent of the world. And last year alone, BNI generated 17.8 million referrals, resulting in more than 26.7 billion US dollars worth of business for its members. So we're here to chat with the father of modern networking to find out how we can help others and help ourselves and grow our business with this kind of very important, but sometimes idea that eludes us, right? Is finding friends, making connections. So we're here to get educated. So Ivan, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and thanks for having me on, Robert. I really appreciate it.
Happy to have you. And so, BNI, I've seen it, I've heard of it. Some of us have heard about it. It's this huge organization. What is it?
Well, it's a referral marketing platform for small businesses. We help people create referrals for life. It's a structured program. Our groups meet every week. They get to know each other and pass referrals to each other. In the trailing past 12 months, we passed 17.1 million referrals and generated over 27 billion with a B, over 27 billion US dollars worth of business for our members. And that's self-reported numbers. Those are numbers where I made this much money and they put it into the system. So they're not numbers that we create. They're numbers that the members report. Now, here's the awesome thing about those numbers, okay? If you take a look at the United Nations estimates of GDP, gross domestic product, there are actually 100 countries in the world with a lower GDP than what BNI generated for its members in business. And so we want to change the way the world does business and have them focus on helping each other to build lifelong referrals.
Very cool. So huge numbers, and it's very important. And I find like networking and socializing, it's one of those things where I feel like on a weekly basis, I need my logical brain to override my emotional brain, because I talk myself out of the socializing and I tell myself, well, I have other things to do, right? I have client work or administrative work to do. But then when you look at like the secrets of success, right? And Think and Grow Rich, or when someone has an like autobiography, like what worked was the connections they built. So there's this weird, like kind of lagging indicator that I find myself like always having to like re-psych myself up to understand. And like, am I alone in this? Because it feels
you're
like
not alone.
a weird topic.
Some people just they don't like to network. Some people they're so busy that they feel they don't have time to network. But the problem with that, of course, is then how are you going to get business? If you don't have time to go out and network, how are you going to get business? Well, you can advertise. I believe in advertising, but how are you going to make the money to do the advertising? So, it's one of those things that you have to do. Now, I can give you a baseline of what the average person spends in their networking efforts. And this is based on a survey that I did about 10 years ago of 12,000 people all around the world, not just BNI members. It was open to the public. And 12,000 people spent on average 6.3 hours a week networking. Now, that would include going to a networking meeting. That would include doing one-to-ones with somebody, over coffee. That would include writing thank you notes, instant messaging people, about something that they posted. I mean, all of that is touch points. So that 6.3 hours is touch points. But now here's the deal. And when I have an audience, they're like, okay, 6.3 hours, got it. Roughly 6.5 hours. I say, how many of you in the audience want to be average? And they're like, well, no, I don't want to be average. Well, the sweet spot's about 8 hours. So people that spend about 8 hours a week networking generate a significant percentage. Sometimes it's as much as 100% of their business, but the average was 60 or 70% of their business for people who spend 8 hours a week networking, making connections, contacts, relationships. That's what you want to do.
Very nice. And I'm getting like a little bit of a subtext here about how I think we all do it, right? We all do some amount of the thank you notes and the one-on-ones, but then you would hope that we would like pursue goals deliberately. And you would hope that if there's this thing that I'm doing that's working out for me on accident, then why not do it proactively? And that way it can be consistent and it can be kind of that that there's that uncomfortableness, right? Like, oh, well, if I do it 6 hours a week naturally, if I do it 8 hours a week, that's a nice like 20% improvement. And
Yeah.
even when I searched you in AI, they say that like BNI kind of like formalizes this kind of activity, right? Like you
Yeah,
meet, you
it's a
get
very, our
credible.
meetings are pretty structured. They open up with some open networking, and then everyone sits down, they go around the room. Now, this is our groups that meet in person. 70% of our organization meets in person. 15% is a hybrid, 1 week in person, the rest online. 15% is completely online. But in either case, we go around the room and you have a chance to introduce yourself. It's anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute, depending on how large the group is. And here's the key, and we really try to drive this home with BNI members, is don't stand up and try to sell to people. Stand up and try to educate people how to refer you. So get laser specific about your product so that people can remember what it is that you do, and then they can go out and refer you more effectively. So we go around, we introduce ourselves, we have one speaker, sometimes 2 a week. They're always members. We don't bring in outside speakers. It's a member to go a little bit deeper and explain what they do. And then we have the most important part of the meeting. That's the referral part of the meeting. And that's where you go around the room and you say, I've got 2 referrals today. One's for Robert, one's for so-and-so. This is how I got them. And, they're expecting your call. And that's what we track. And then, of course, online, when that turns into a sale, the person can put in how much it was. And it can be anonymous because there are medical professions and there are attorneys that, that has to have attorney-client privilege and obviously medical doctors. So you don't necessarily know who it is that got it, but the system tracks all that safely.
Very cool. And what a nice business and lifestyle that would be if you went to a meeting and someone said, hey, I have people for you. And the phrase you use, they're expecting your call. And so I imagine if someone is maybe afraid or timid about going to a BNI meeting, it sounds amazing, right? Because like they're people that go there every week, they develop the muscle, that they want you to succeed. They're used to this. It's a skill you can develop.
Right.
But if someone is like concerned about this, like what would you say to allay some fears and get them to try this out?
Well, listen, networking is a contact sport. You got to get belly to belly with people. You got to go out there and connect with people. It's not as frightening as one might think. People think that extroverts are great at networking. Well, let's talk about that. So extroverts have no problem meeting people. They're fantastic at meeting people. And they're happy to talk. And Robert, what do you think their favorite subject is?
Themselves,
always. Yes. They want to talk about themselves. But that's not what makes a good networker. A good networker has 2 ears and 1 mouth and uses them both proportionately. So for introverts, platforms like BNI are perfect because you're not going to be in a room with 500 people and you don't know where to start. You're in a room with 20, 30, 40. Our biggest groups have about 100 people. And there's someone who will walk you around and introduce you. So you're not just there by yourself when you're visiting the first time. We have a visitor host that walks people around and introduces them to other members. And then the best thing to do is just ask questions. How long have you been doing this? What do you like most about what you do? What are some, what are great clients for you? You ask questions and you get the other person to open up. That's what networking is about, it's about making those connections.
Very nice. So ask questions, be curious. So that's great advice. And then you also kind of give the advice of don't just sell, like help others and then kind of, develop the long-termness of it all. But I'm curious, like out of everything that you built and you've seen, and there's all these clubs, like, is there any advice you have for someone new that maybe like they'd wish they'd known, or maybe something that is not immediately obvious about is like the do's and don'ts?
Yeah, look, we don't teach this in colleges and universities anywhere in the world. And believe me, I've tried. We don't teach it because it's full-time tenured professors that control the curriculum. And most full-time tenured professors in business have never run a business. So, they don't think networking is important. They don't think sales is important. How many classes in universities are on how to close a sale? Like none. So, it's not being taught. So the short answer to your question is be a sponge, learn how to network. I've written a lot of books. I've written 32 books, probably half of them or more about networking. But if you were to join a BNI chapter, you want to go through the training. We have a several hour online training and in-person training on how to network effectively within the context of BNI. What do you do right? What could you be doing wrong? So you want to be a sponge and pick up as much as you can, because you're not being taught this in school. We have a podcast with almost 1,000 podcasts on it. Listen to the podcast. Be a sponge. Be a learner. That's one of our core values. Be a lifelong learner. You do that, and then you're going to be sharpening your axe and improving your game, and you're going to be closing sales. By the way, it doesn't happen overnight. Networking's a marathon, not a sprint, right? It takes time to build relationships. And as you build those relationships, you're going to get referrals.
And no, you're right. No one tells us this, that even after school, you have to be this lifelong learner, and that there are subjects that are not taught in any school. So it's up to us, right? You can choose to learn the stuff and develop it and repeat it and get good at it, but you can also choose to be ignorant of it. That's a personal choice. So the two paths that are in front of you are up to you. So this is amazing, right? There's a science to it. There's things that we can get trained about it. And I'm curious about why you created this. Was there something you wanted to do since you were a kid, or what sparked the idea?
Well, I'd like to tell you I had this vision of an international organization, but the truth is I needed some referrals from my consulting practice back in 1985. BNI started in 1985, and I put together a small group of people who I liked. They're friends of mine. We took only one person per profession, and I was hoping they'd be willing to give me referrals. I was willing to give them referrals. And people just kept coming and asking me to open up another group and another group and another group. And after a year, we had 20 chapters by accident. And that's when I realized that I had struck a chord in the business community, that businesses were desperate for a systematic referral marketing system. Before I started BNI, I went to a lot of networks that were really mercenary. Everyone was trying to sell to me. I felt like I'd been slimed. I needed to get a shower. Then I went to a lot of networking groups that were totally social. It was happy hour and hors d'oeuvres, and nobody was doing business. What I wanted was, instead of transactional, I wanted it to be relational. And instead of totally social, I wanted it to be relational. And so that connection that glue is our philosophy of giver's gain. You're going to join BNI, come in understanding that first you have to give. You got to help. You got to help other people. And then it's going to come back around to you in spades.
Very nice. It simplifies things, doesn't it? Because if you're not pursuing all these other outcomes, you're like, hey, I'm just there to give. And then you have that degree of faith that once you build enough of the spider web, then other things will come back to you. And I find sometimes the referral giving and getting a little bit mentally exhausting, right? I'll write a 3-way email, or I'll get a lead and I'll contact them and I'll follow up and I'll report back to the person. And I like this whole idea of setting aside time to do this consistently. It hurts my head a little bit, because there's sometimes a 5 or 7 step process, and it feels overly creative trying to adapt it to something that needs to be kind of an assembly line. So have you ever got feedback like this, or how do I stick with this when it's kind of, for some reason, mentally taxing just to follow up and pursue the leads?
You could be digging ditches. This is way easier. When I was in college, I jackhammered a parking lot. That was hard. This is easy. It's about meeting people and connecting and building relationships and friendships. Now, you said, it's exhausting for you to do it for one person. Now, flip that. How many people will be doing that for you? Because if you're in a room of 40 or 50 people, you're going to be getting referrals from a number of people. And if they're doing it right, they're going to be doing the kinds of things that you described. You introduce them by email. You really want to knock yourself out? Introduce them in person. So I'll take you to the office and I'll introduce you. That's networking 401. That's, high level networking. And if you can get people to do that for you, then you're going to be increasing the amount of business that you get, which means you can reduce all the advertising you're doing. If you're cold calling, you can reduce all of that and generate most of your business through referrals. Referral marketing is the easiest way to generate business.
I like the flipping. Yeah, you say that there's there's so many more difficult ways, like you mentioned at the beginning, right? Advertising. So by kind of ramping up your referral activity, then you can maybe reduce the other things that are maybe if they're not working out or the juice isn't worth the squeeze. This can improve a lot of what's out there for you. So this is a really cool idea. And I'm curious about the struggles along the way, right? Because 1985 was a long time ago. So did you
Yeah.
have any like difficulties growing this, or any time you felt like quitting?
Never felt like quitting. I've been doing this for almost 42 years. Never felt like quitting. About 12 years ago, I brought in partners into the company. So I have gone from building the company, which is a franchise organization, from being King Arthur to being Colonel Sanders, where I'm sort of the spokesperson of the organization. So for your entrepreneurs out there, this is a nugget. Write this down. You got to work in your flame and not in your wax. When you're working in your flame, you're on fire, you're excited, you're passionate about what you're doing. People can hear it in your voice, they can see it in the way you behave. When you're working in your wax, it just takes all your energy away. And people can hear that in your voice and they can see that in the way you behave. So now, let me give you a caveat. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get to do what you want to do. So there was a time where I was happy being King Arthur. That was my flame. And building, business that became international. But at some point, my flame transitioned. I would much rather pour into people, do interviews, write, and do speaking. And so, entrepreneurs, find your flame and work your flame. That's probably one of the most important things. And I was pretty good at that from the very beginning. Now, you asked what challenges there were. The one challenge that has been around for 42 years, I'm writing a book right now. As a matter of fact, the manuscript is done. We're talking to a publisher called Garage to Global. How do you take your business from your garage and scale it to a global enterprise? Even if you don't want to be global, you want to scale it within your community. How do you do that? Well, one of the key things one of the key problems in scaling a business is the curse of complexity. The curse of complexity. People just want to add crap to systems. They just keep adding stuff. And then your process becomes too administrative, too bureaucratic. I mean, if adding stuff would make things better, the IRS would be the most efficient organization in the world. But their manuals are how big? There's books and books and books and books of them. The DMV would be a wonderful place to go to, but no. The more complicated you make things, the worse it's going to get. It's also known as feature creep, where features keep creeping in, and you do it with good intentions, but then it gets out of control. It's the one thing that we have constantly had to focus on in the last 42 years.
Ooh, that's interesting. So there's a lot built into what you said, right? That there are the various seasons of your life and your business. And sometimes
Yes.
there's the season for cleaning out, simplifying, removing what doesn't work. And as you evolve and grow as a person, what got you excited at age 50 might not excite you as much as, say, age 65. So it's important to have that self-awareness, try new things. And they always talk about building your team, right? Who will be your allies and who will you delegate to and who will refer you to. And there's so much built into this, and there's so many places we could go, but you're the expert, you're the master. So my final question to you here is about the question that you create for me. So in this conversation we're having about having this vision and growing your network and referrals and all that stuff, do you think there might be a missing question in our conversation that I should be asking you? I just don't know what to ask you.
Well, you've asked some really, really good questions. I would say that if you want to spend 8 hours a week networking, that you really need to diversify the kinds of networks that you belong to. I urge you to go out and join a chamber of commerce. And that always surprises people because they think, well, a chamber is competing with BNI. No, they're different. Chambers are about visibility, creating visibility. I would join a service club, Rotary, Lions, Kiwanis. They're about making contributions to the community and rubbing elbows with other successful business people. I would join a group like BNI, where we're very focused on doing referrals. And so you diversify the kinds of networks that you're in so that you can get in that 8 hours a month, and then be prepared to wait a little while. It takes a little while to get business. I have this great, in my podcast, this guy sent me 6 years of referrals. We used to have referral slips. Now all the referrals are done online. And the first year he sent me this, it was actually he sent me the first 2 years. First year it was like this high. The second year was like this high. The third year was this high. The fourth year was this high. I don't think my fingers go wide enough for the sixth year. It was 6 years. And it showed that the first 6 months, maybe he didn't get a lot of business. But as people got to know, like, and trust him, they started referring him. And the second year is better. And the third year is better. And the fourth year. So give it time, keep plugging it away, do the right things, and you're going to generate lifelong referrals.
Amazing. This is very helpful advice, especially for those of us who are unsure of what to do next, or, in business, there's always the up years and the down years. And they say, plant your garden and things like that. And so it's important to stick with this. That way you have your circle of friends and you grow it and you help others. And that way your life actually has meaning, right? You're not just dying the richest man in the graveyard. You're someone that is a positive force for others. And so if we're inspired and motivated by what you had to say here today, Ivan, what are some next steps here? How do we find out more about BNI, your books, and you as a person?
Well, BNI.com. Anyone who's interested in visiting a chapter, go to BNI.com. Worldwide, it might send you to a national website from there. My blog is ivanmisner.com. My name is on the screen there. It's ivanmisner.com. And I have, I would guess, 3,000 or 4,000 posts. I've been doing them since 2007. So there's thousands of free content, all free content. Go to Amazon, put in my name. You'll find a lot of books that I've done. Those are some of the ways that you can connect with me.
I'm extremely impressed. This is an important skill we need to learn, and some important activities we need to perform. That way we can help others. And who knew there was so much to say about networking and referrals? Well, we heard it today from Ivan Misner at ivanmisner.com. And you can and should check out a BNI chapter in your city. They want you to be there. They want you to grow. They want you to succeed, because a rising tide lifts all boats, as they say. So go to BNI.com, find a local chapter in your town. We all know it's awkward, but just go ahead and do it. So much of what's worthwhile, like you mentioned, doing your taxes. You mentioned driving a car at the DMV. There are some like adult tasks that are a little bit awkward, but hey, once you got that driver's license, once you learn to drive a car, wasn't life a little better afterwards? Once you paid off those taxes, didn't you feel a little better? So similarly, when it becomes time to grow your business exponentially, become a master connector, and so much more, go to BNI.com and go and have a fun first meeting. Like Ivan said, there'll be, what's the person that introduces you to the others?
The visitor host. There should be a visitor host there, and they will walk you around and introduce you to members, so that you're not, the wallflower in the corner.
Yeah, and then someday, years from now, then you'll be that person that when some new scared person comes and gets introduced by the visitor host, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember when it was awkward for me. And then you can kind of help out the next wave of people coming in. So what a great organization, and a great repeating task that we should perform, because we're all doing networking in some way or another, but why not do more of it? That way you can be more in control of your destiny and the path and the direction of your business, and therefore your life. So BNI.com and ivanmisner.com to check out those 3,000 or 4,000 blog posts dating back to 2007. And before you let you go, Ivan, It's time for the scary part of the podcast, where I try to stump you. I try to put you on the spot by asking about a fun or interesting quote or lesson that has served you. So what comes to mind as far as a fun or interesting quote or lesson?
Well, I would say interesting. I'll give you the interesting. I wrote a book called Infinite Legacy, and it talks about, the legacy you leave in life. Is it going to be an accidental one, or is it going to be an intentional one? And if an intentional one is about living your values. And so the quote early on in the book, there's a quote that I remember from college, and I'll paraphrase it. It's by Jean-Paul Sartre. It says, "We all die too soon or too late, and yet our life is complete at that moment, with a line drawn neatly under it, ready for the summing up. We are our deeds in life and little more." I love that quote, because, the more gray hair I get, the more people have said, what's the legacy that you want to leave? And the answer is your life is your legacy. However you lived your life is the legacy that's going to show up. It could be accidental or it could be intentional.
So make it a good one. Make it something that you choose, not something that just is a roll of the dice. So you're asking the important questions here, and we need to check out our local BNI chapter. Like we said before the call, I was looking myself for some motivation to check out the one in my town and the one over. So now I have some homework to do. And you out there in podcast land, visit that BNI chapter, experience the power of the BNI network, meet those members and learn how they can help to grow your business, and then apply to become a member of a BNI chapter once you enjoy your time being a visitor. So go to bni.com to take that next step. Their phone number is 800-825-8286. You can find out everything you need to know on their website. And thanks so much, Ivan, for stopping by and being generous with your time and teaching us what we need to know. I'm very grateful.
Thanks for having me on, Robert. I'm happy to come back anytime.